December 23, 1944, Camp Clarinda, Iowa. The frost clings to the barbed wire in crystalline patterns, transforming the fence line into something almost beautiful in the weak winter light. Obergefreiter Klaus Zimmermann stands in the compound yard, his breath forming small clouds in the frigid air, watching as American trucks roll through the main gate. He expects supplies, rations perhaps, mail for the guards. What he does not expect, what none of the 2,000 German prisoners at Camp Clarinda expect, is the cargo that begins to emerge from those trucks. Wooden crates, dozens of them, stenciled with names of towns he has never heard of: Sioux City, Des Moines, Council Bluffs, Cedar Rapids. Inside each crate, hand-wrapped packages tied with string and ribbon, each one labeled in careful English script with a name. To a German soldier. From Clarinda High School junior class. Zimmermann stares at the package placed in his hands. It weighs perhaps 2 pounds. The paper is decorated with drawings of pine trees and stars. Someone has written Frohe Weihnachten in uncertain letters, Merry Christmas in his own language, misspelled but unmistakable. He does not open it. Not yet. He cannot reconcile what he holds with what he knows to be true about his enemy. 3 years earlier, Klaus Zimmermann had been a different man in a different world. December 1941, outside Moscow, where the cold was a living thing that killed more efficiently than Russian bullets. He remembers the propaganda, the certainty that had carried him east. America was weak, corrupted by Jewish influence and Negro music and democratic decadence. A mongrel nation of shopkeepers and Hollywood actors who would never send their soft sons to die in European mud. The Führer had said so. The newspapers had confirmed it. Every party rally had reinforced this truth. And then came North Africa, where Zimmermann first encountered American soldiers, farm boys and factory workers who fought with a strange combination of casual efficiency and overwhelming firepower. Then Sicily, where the artillery never seemed to stop, where American supply lines delivered fresh ammunition faster than German troops could expend what little they had. Then Normandy, where Zimmermann's regiment had been shattered by naval bombardments so intense it turned the earth itself into a liquid thing. He had surrendered near St. Lo in July, half-starved, completely surrounded, watching as American medics treated German wounded with the same plasma and sulfa drugs they used on their own men. That had been the first crack in the foundation. Now, this. Christmas gifts from children. Inside the recreation barracks that evening, Zimmermann finally opens his package, surrounded by other prisoners, men from every corner of the former Reich. Inside, a hand-knit scarf in blue wool, a bar of chocolate, real chocolate, not the ersatz substitute made from acorns that Germany had been producing since 1942. A small wooden figurine, crudely carved but careful, depicting a soldier. A letter written in English with a German translation attempted on a separate page. Dear German soldier, my name is Dorothy Patterson. I am 16 years old. I made this scarf myself. I hope it keeps you warm. My brother James is fighting in France. I pray for him every night. I pray for you too. This war should not stop us from remembering we are all human beings. Merry Christmas. May you see your family again soon. The barracks falls silent as men read their letters aloud, translating for those whose English is weak. Every package is different. Some contain socks, others books, German classics like Goethe and Schiller, purchased from used bookstores or borrowed from libraries. One prisoner receives a harmonica, another a deck of playing cards, a third a small leather-bound Bible with his name inscribed inside by someone who had never met him, would never meet him, but it's been hours personalizing this gift for an enemy soldier in Iowa.
Feldwebel Otto Krebs, a veteran of Poland and France, a party member since 1936, sits on his bunk, turning a bar of Hershey's chocolate over in his hands as if it were a religious artifact requiring interpretation. He had been captured at the Falaise Gap, where American thunderbolts had strafed his convoy for 3 hours, where the roads had been choked with burning vehicles and dead horses, and the remnants of German divisions that had ceased to exist as coherent military units. He had hated the Americans then. Clean hatred, simple and pure. They had never known occupation, never felt a Polish winter or a Russian offensive. They were tourists in this war, playing at soldier while their homeland remained untouched by bombing, by invasion, by starvation. And now their children, their high school children, were sending him chocolate. The cognitive dissonance threatens to split his skull. In the German newsreels he had watched before capture, American teenagers were portrayed as delinquent, jazz-obsessed, materialistic degenerates who could not locate Europe on a map. Yet these same teenagers had somehow organized a gift drive for enemy prisoners, had used their allowance money to buy supplies, had spent their evenings knitting scarves and writing letters to men whose armies had conquered France, had bombed London, had murdered millions. The documentary evidence tells its own story. Records from the American Red Cross showed that Christmas 1944 witnessed an unprecedented civilian mobilization across the United States. High schools in 43 states participated in POW gift programs, coordinating with churches, civic organizations, and local newspapers. In Iowa alone, over 15,000 individual packages were prepared for German and Italian prisoners held in camps scattered across the cornfields in prairie towns. The Clarinda High School junior class had assembled 412 packages over 6 weeks, funded by bake sales, car washes, and war bond drive proceeds. Dorothy Patterson's letter to Klaus Zimmermann was one of several hundred she and her classmates wrote, each one personalized, each one attempting in careful teenage handwriting to bridge an unbridgeable gap. The school yearbook from spring 1945 would feature a photograph of the organizing committee. 17-year-old girls in saddle shoes and sweaters standing beside collection boxes overflowing with donated items. The caption read simply, "Christmas Project. Care packages for enemy prisoners of war." No irony, no hesitation. Just American teenagers exercising a peculiar form of warfare that no German military manual had prepared anyone to understand. The psychology behind it carried layers the prisoners could barely comprehend. These were children who had grown up during the Depression, who knew scarcity intimately, whose families had stood in bread lines and lost farms to bank foreclosures. Yet they gave from limited resources to men whose nations had started a war that was killing their brothers and fathers. One teacher at Clarinda High, Mrs. Eleanor Morrison, explained it to the local newspaper in terms that would be quoted in camp newsletters. "We want our boys overseas to be treated humanely if captured. We demonstrate our values by how we treat those in our power. This is what separates civilization from barbarism." But for the German prisoners, the gifts represented something more destabilizing than American moral posturing. They represented abundance weaponized at a civilizational level, wielded even by children who should have known only rage.
Zimmermann had grown up in Weimar poverty, had joined the Hitler Youth partly for the meals, had believed the Nazi promise that Germany's destiny was to seize the resources that decadent democracies hoarded selfishly. The entire ideological foundation of National Socialism rested on scarcity, Lebensraum, living space, the notion that Germany must expand or starve, must conquer or perish. Every speech, every rally, every propaganda film had hammered this message. The world is a zero-sum competition for limited resources, and only the strong deserve to survive. Yet here was America, fighting a global war on 4 continents in 2 oceans, fielding millions of soldiers, producing tanks and planes and ships at rates that defied comprehension. And still its children had excess resources to gift to enemy prisoners. The chocolate bar became a symbol of this impossible reality. Not military chocolate, not survival rations, but Hershey's, a commercial product so common in America that high school students could purchase it casually for strangers they had been taught to fear. Back in Germany, chocolate had been rationed since 1939, then disappeared entirely from civilian distribution by 1942. In America, teenagers bought it for prisoners of war. The camp records documented the psychological impact in surprising ways. Disciplinary incidents dropped 40%
in the weeks following Christmas 1944. Escape attempts, already rare from the Iowa camps, ceased entirely for 3 months. Camp newspapers, published by the prisoners, began running articles debating the meaning of the gifts. Letters to the editor arguing over whether accepting them constituted collaboration or simple human gratitude. One anonymous letter, preserved in the National Archives, captured the existential crisis. They have us rebuild their roads during the day, then send us gifts at night. They guard us with rifles, then their children write us letters of prayer. How does one make sense of captors who behave this way? Either they are fools who do not understand war, or we are fools who never understood America. I fear it is the latter. The writer was never identified, but the sentiment echoed through barracks conversations, through the long Iowa winter nights, through the slow process of ideological foundations cracking apart under the weight of small kindnesses. The transformation happened gradually, spreading through the prisoner population like a virus of doubt. On Christmas Eve, the camp commandant permitted a Douglas fir to be erected in the main yard, donated by a local farmer, decorated with paper ornaments made by the same students who had sent the gifts. German prisoners sang Stille Nacht, while American guards stood watch, some singing along in English. Silent Night, the same melody, the same God, theoretically watching over a world that had divided itself into warring camps willing to burn entire cities for ideological abstractions. Klaus Zimmermann sang, the hand-knit scarf around his neck still smelling faintly of lavender soap, and felt something inside himself break apart. Not his loyalty to Germany. That would require more time, more evidence, the full revelation of what his nation had done in the camps whose existence he had denied even to himself. But his certainty about America, about democracy, about the fundamental nature of this war. How could the weak, decadent Americans conjure this strange magic, this impossible combination of industrial might and individual compassion? Of 1,000-bomber raids over Berlin and Christmas scarves for the men who had tried to shoot them down. The propaganda had prepared him for American wealth, for American machines, even for American military competence. But it had not prepared him for American mercy, exercised not by command, but by choice, not by generals, but by children. Years later, the letters would surface in archives and memoirs. Otto Krebs wrote to his wife in March 1945 after mail service resumed to Western Germany. I no longer know what to believe about the Americans. They feed us better than our own army fed us in France. Their children send us gifts. Their Negro soldiers guard us without cruelty, though we were told they were savages. Everything we were taught appears to be inverted. I think perhaps we were the savages all along. The letter was intercepted by censors, copied for intelligence analysis, filed away in boxes that would not be opened until researchers began examining POW psychological assessments in the 1970s. Krebs survived the war, returned to Hamburg, Germany, and spent the rest of his life as a schoolteacher, never joining any veterans organizations, never speaking of his service except to tell students about Christmas 1944 in Iowa, about the chocolate bar that had unmade his certainties. Klaus Zimmermann kept the scarf Dorothy Patterson had knitted, preserved it through repatriation in 1946, through the chaos of occupation Germany, through the Berlin airlift and the division of his country into competing zones of ideology. In 1952, he emigrated to America under the Displaced Persons Act, settling in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, working as a machinist at a factory that produced agricultural equipment. He never contacted Dorothy Patterson, though he learned she had married, had children, had become a librarian in Omaha. The scarf remained in a wooden box in his closet, growing threadbare and moth-eaten, a relic of the moment his old world ended and a new one became possible. He would tell his American-born children about it, about Christmas in the camp, about opening a package from an enemy child and understanding for the first time that everything he had believed was a lie. Not the tactical lies about troop movements or battle outcomes, but the foundational lies about human nature, about democracy, about the meaning of civilization itself. The scarf, hand-knit by a 16-year-old girl in Iowa who prayed for her enemy, accomplished what no interrogation or re-education program could achieve. It demonstrated that abundance shared is more powerful than scarcity hoarded,
That a democracy trusting its teenagers to correspond with enemy soldiers represented not weakness, but confidence born from unshakable foundations. That mercy extended from a position of strength carries more force than cruelty born from fear. The Americans had not simply defeated Germany with superior production and military technology, they had defeated it with chocolate bars and woolen scarves, with gestures so small and so profound that they redefined what victory could mean. Klaus Zimmermann had surrendered his weapon in France, had surrendered his freedom at the prisoner cage near St. Lo, but he surrendered his certainty in Iowa, holding a Christmas gift from a girl who had every reason to hate him and chose prayer instead. That was the real conquest, the one that could not be reversed by counteroffensive or propaganda or time. The gift of a scarf in winter, offered across an abyss of ideology and violence, proved more powerful than all the armies of the Reich. It proved that some truths are stronger than steel, and some victories are won not on battlefields, but in the quiet moment when an enemy becomes human again, wrapped in wool knitted by merciful hands.